Welcome to the special member meeting of the Moss Creek Owners Association. I'm Jenny Johnson, and I serve you as your president. The first order of business is to determine if we have a fully constituted meeting in compliance with the MCOA covenants. Jody Rolfe, MCOA secretary, will report on whether we have received enough proxies to establish a quorum. Jody, please.
Thank you, Jenny. I'll now read the notice of the meeting dated September 23rd, 2021. In accordance with the provisions of the Moss Creek governance documents, notice is hereby given that the special meeting of the members of the Moss Creek Owners Association, Inc. will be held via Zoom webinar on Tuesday, October 26, 2021 at 4 p.m. for the purpose of conducting all lawful business of the association and to announce the results of the Board of Director elections and the proposed changes to the MCOA covenants and bylaws. The Moss Creek covenants establish the quorum requirement for regular or special meetings of the association as 30% of those entitled to cast votes, either in person or by proxy. This proxy is used to establish the quorum and also provides for full power of substitution, but only as to those matters included on the agenda for the meeting, which is shown below. The notice was signed by Linnea Wilson, who at the time was secretary, and dated September 23rd, 2021. Quorum. Article 3, Section 5 of the Moss Creek Covenants establishes a quorum requirement of a minimum of 30% of the eligible votes, which for this meeting would be 611. Either in person or by proxy. We have 960 by proxy, representing 47% of the eligible votes. We therefore have established a quorum and may proceed with the meeting.
Thank you, Jody. First, we will need to approve 2 sets of minutes. In addition to my remarks, you'll hear from John Miller, our general manager, and from Linnea Wilson, who was elected treasurer of the board when Jay Harvey, our former treasurer, sold his home and was no longer eligible to serve. I want to thank Jay for his leadership, both as treasurer and chair of finance committee, and for his service on our board. And thanks goes to Linnea for stepping up to replace Jay for the remainder of the year. And added thanks to Jody for agreeing to serve in the secretary position that was vacated with the change in the treasurer position. We will reserve time at the end of the meeting for questions related to the items we're covering today. You may send in your questions during the meeting by using the Q&A box on your screen. As is our custom, please put your name and address on your question. We're going to go with 1 question per member as we answer these questions until all members who have submitted a question have gotten at least 1 question answered. Then we'll circle back and pick up the second and multiple questions of any members. Let's now move to the approval of the minutes, which have been posted on the website for review. I would like to entertain a motion to waive the reading of the minutes of the following meetings. 1, special member meeting minutes of October 20, 2020, and annual meeting minutes of April 20, 2021, and accept them in the form in which they were distributed. Do I have such a motion? Thank you. Second.
I do.
Thank you. If anyone has an objection to approving the minutes as listed above, please state so in the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen. Otherwise, I will assume that you are in favor and the motion will be approved. Any objections, Susanna?
No.
All right. Hearing none, both the motions are approved for both sets of minutes. Thank you very much. Next, here are our current year's board members. As I mentioned, Jay Harvey resigned for the board when his home closed on October 15th. Please thank these people for their service. I'd like to also thank Dick Obrig for serving as our chair of the audit committee and Skip Leonard for serving as chair of the nominating committee. Could I have that slide, please? Thank you. And here are the members now of the nominating committee for 2021. Let's thank them for their service. Moss Creek functions through its committees, which serve as an interface between members and management. We owe them a debt of gratitude for applying to be on a committee and agreeing to serve when selected. There are quite a few who volunteered. Here are their names. Thank you for your service. And now I turn the meeting over to Linnea Wilson, our treasurer, for the financial report. Linnea, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My objective this afternoon is to provide you with background information about what we do and present details about our financial status through September of this year. I'll attempt to make this as enjoyable as possible because the news is all very good. Presented here on your screen is an overview of what we intend to cover this afternoon. A summary of the role of the Finance Committee and the members who serve on that committee, a summary of the role of the Audit Committee and its members, and a review of our financial performance through the end of September. The focus of our Finance Committee is to ensure that the decisions and actions we make always support the Moss Creek mission, which is to provide an exceptional mix of services and amenities that enhances the appeal, value, and quality of life for our members while protecting the assets of our association. The roles and responsibilities of the Finance Committee are defined in the bylaws and policy statements and shown here on the slide. I want to extend a special thank you to the members of the Finance Committee for volunteering their time and expertise to this panel. The Finance Committee members are listed here. The audit process is supervised by Moss Creek's Audit Committee, whose functions and duties are explicitly defined again in our bylaws and policy statements as shown here. Many thanks to the volunteer members of this committee who share their financial and legal expertise with our community. The 2021-22 Audit Committee members are shown here. And of special note, a special note are the efforts of the Moss Creek accounting staff working diligently behind the scenes to make certain that all financial statements and documentation are completed according to accepted financial standards and announcements and in a very professional, responsible, and timely fashion. Thank you goes to Payman Shamlu, our controller, and accounting staff, Carol Parker, Morgan Thomas, and Rachel Grimes. Now, before we get into the details and all the numbers, I thought everyone should know that Moss Creek remains stable and financially sound. Our reserves are in good shape. We have in our plans the ability to deal with hardships and unexpected bumps in the road. We are ahead of budget in all key areas, and member equity, as reflected on our balance sheet, is up 17% versus last year at this same time. So that's what you can expect for the next few slides, which gets a little more granular into what we deal with on the P&L and the balance sheet. And since we have so many new members in the community, I wanted to begin with a few definitions to make sure we all speak the same language. Our operating income is the net of our revenue minus our expenses. So the revenue includes such items as our annual dues and other usage fees. Our expenses include wages and benefits, insurance, and items including cost of goods and other supplies. These expenses, for the most part, are tied directly to the services provided to the membership. Non-operating income is the money that is mainly generated from membership certificate fees, the amount that is paid when a property changes hands. Non-operating expenses are generally interest payments. And finally, reserve funding is the amount of money we set aside each year to cover the replacement of assets as they age. The total of our net operating income and non-operating income are used to fund that reserve account, to pay down any debt, and to fund new projects. So now let's look at our operating income as of September 30th. Operating revenues through September totaled $8.5 million, which is $453,000 better than budget. Higher revenues compared to budget are due to increased activity fee signups and increased usage, primarily in the areas of golf, the clubhouse, and fitness. On the expense side, we were slightly higher than budget. Expenses and cost of sales totaled $8 million, which is $22,000 above budget. The higher cost of sales were due to the, as I mentioned earlier, the increased clubhouse usage, but that was partially offset by reduced expenses in wages and salaries due to open positions. The total operating surplus as of September 30th was $497,000. Non-operating revenue is primarily driven by membership certificate fees on home sales, and also an allocation of our HOA fees to a non-operating capital income. On the non-operating side, through the end of September, we've had 86 property transactions. Homes are still selling very quickly in Moss Creek. Our non-operating surplus through September was $2.5 million, which is $855,000 ahead of budget. So in total, as of 9/30/21, we experienced a net surplus of just over $2.9 million, which is almost $1.3 million ahead of budget. When you look at the debt that we have as of September 30th, it totals $1.1 million, and that's exclusively on our golf course maintenance and golf cart equipment loan. This loan is taken in lieu of a lease, as it is the most cost-effective way to finance the carts and maintenance equipment, and we change them out every 3 years. Turning to our cash position, as shown here, we had $4.8 million in unrestricted cash, $5.8 million in the reserve fund, and $180,000 in restricted funds, for a total of almost $10.8 million. Our financial strength is also measured by our balance sheet. Our total assets increased by 8%, and our members' equity increased by 17% as compared to this same time last year. So to summarize, we believe that it is reasonable to conclude that based on accounting standards, Moss Creek is in a very strong financial position. Our balance sheet continues to improve, and we have adequate reserves to maintain our infrastructure, and we now are contributing towards new capital needs. Our fee structure remains competitive with other local communities, and we continue to attract home buyers and activity plan participants to Moss Creek. We continue to move forward, focusing on protecting, improving, and maintaining our assets, providing our residents with amenities that create value and enjoyment, preserving our natural environment, and promoting our community to new buyers. I hope that leaves you with a good sense of how strong we are, and it concludes my presentation. I'd now like to introduce John Miller.
Thank you, Linnea. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us for the special member meeting this afternoon. First, I'd like to take a few moments to introduce our department managers who are on the call with us today. And pictured on the screen, Jim Albano, our security chief, Katie Ruth, our director of racket sports and the newest member of our management team, Tom Logue, the director of golf, Karen Davidson, Human Resources Manager, Payman Shamlu, Controller, Susanna Johnston, the Assistant General Manager, Jim O'Connor, Clubhouse Manager, Lenny Giordano, our Executive Chef, Roger Ward, our Water Oak Utility Manager, Mitchell Wilkerson, our Director of Golf and Grounds Maintenance, Pinckney Crosby, our Facility Maintenance Manager, and Mike Paulmeyer, our Fitness and Wellness Manager. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize employees who reach milestones in their tenure with Moss Creek during 2021. On the page that's on the screen now, you can see we have 10 employees who are celebrating 5-year anniversaries this year, 4 employees celebrating 10 years of service, and 3 employees who have reached 15 years of employment. We have one individual, Cleto Gomez, on our golf maintenance team, celebrating 25 years of service at Moss Creek. And the longest serving member of our Moss Creek team is our Facility Maintenance Manager, Pinckney Crosby, who has been with us since 1976, an incredible 45 years of service to this community. And he's still growing strong, I might add. My thanks to all of our staff for their dedication and commitment to service to the Moss Creek community. Last year at this fall member meeting, much of my presentation was on the COVID-19 pandemic and the ways in which it had affected our operations during 2020. Here we are a year later, and the pandemic is still a challenging issue for us. Of course, the availability of a vaccine earlier this year has lessened the risk of serious illness for those of us who have taken advantage of it. And we have learned to live with the lifestyle changes necessary to mitigate the risk of exposure to the virus. Nevertheless, while we have become accustomed to dealing with the virus, COVID is still affecting us in many ways. With the resurgence of the virus in August, we reinstated a mask requirement for our employees, and once again recommended that members wear a mask when inside at any of our facilities. The economic turmoil brought on by the pandemic exacerbated an already tight labor market in our area, and we have had a very hard time this year filling open positions. The supply chain issues we are hearing about almost daily have also affected our operations, making it hard to get some of the products we rely on for our operations and raising the cost for many of our purchases. And it's been very difficult to find contractors for some of our project work. There were also some positive surprises during the pandemic. Member participation in our various recreational and social activities has continued to be very strong, and food and beverage sales have continued to exceed expectations. Now I would like to give some brief updates on capital projects. The clubhouse renovation project that was approved by the board in August is essentially on hold, pending the results of a member petition challenging the board's decision to move ahead with the project. We had planned to begin construction in early January, but that will no longer be possible. The timing and scope of the project will depend on the outcome of the petition campaign. Another high-profile project on our capital project list for this year is the construction of 4 pickleball courts at our racket sports complex. Progress on this project has been delayed due to some additional work that we need to do to prepare the site for building the courts, coupled with our inability to line up a qualified contractor to do the work. Let me explain that a little more thoroughly. In order to create a site for the pickleball courts, we decided to utilize part of the storage yard in the maintenance facility that is immediately north of the tennis courts. In order to do that, we needed to shift the berm that provides a buffer between the tennis courts and the maintenance facility by roughly 100 feet on average. Earlier this year, we learned from the engineers working with us on the project that the ground that was under the berm was, in their terms, unsuitable organic soils that would need to be excavated and replaced with 2 feet of structural fill in order to provide a stable base upon which to build the courts. We were unable for several weeks to line up an infrastructure contractor qualified to do the extensive site preparation and drainage work that is needed before we can build the courts. The additional work also increased the cost for the project significantly, and the board approved additional funding for the work in August. We now have a contractor engaged to do the site preparation and drainage work. They began last week, and they estimate that it will take about 2 months to complete all of their work. We have a tennis and pickleball court contractor selected, and we have asked them to be ready to build the courts when the site work is complete. I know that a lot of members are anxiously awaiting the new pickleball amenity, and many of you are very frustrated by the delay. As I stated in my recent Advocate article, management has also been very frustrated by the delay. This has been a priority project for us, and we did all we could to get the project done this year. Unfortunately, we experienced delays that were out of our control, and as a result, it will be early next year before we will have the pickleball facility open for play. One behind-the-scenes project that has been underway this year is an improvement to the golf maintenance facility. We are creating a new space for the mechanic shop by enclosing a portion of the covered space currently used for equipment storage. This will provide a much more functional and efficient layout for our mechanics. The spaces that have been used for equipment maintenance and repair work will be converted to storage. This project has also been delayed somewhat by the difficulty lining up contractors, as well as the materials needed for the construction. We are nearing completion, and we do expect to have the project complete by year end. For those of you new to the community, a few years ago, we had an engineering firm prepare a report analyzing our road conditions and providing recommendations for future improvements. The report recommended an 8-year program. We completed year 1 in 2020, and we had planned to continue this year with the second phase of the work. Unfortunately, we experienced delays in getting the work scheduled for paving this fall. In August, the board agreed to combine the work planned for this year with work funded for 2022, and to seek competitive bids for that larger project to be completed next year. We are working with a civil engineering firm now to develop specifications for the project, and we plan to have the work done in the first half of next year. In addition to these projects that are underway, there are also several capital projects that have already been completed this year. One of those projects is storm drainage improvements along number 6 fairway on the South Golf Course between Stablegate and Wax Myrtle Court. Last year, the board approved funding to install a major storm drainage system to replace and expand upon an existing system. The original system, installed decades ago, was not able to handle the storm drainage in that area. The new system has addressed problems reported by several homeowners in that area and improves the storm drainage along that section of the golf course. Early this year, we completed dredging work in several storm drainage ponds. Silt that had accumulated over many years was removed from the pond that runs along holes number 7, number 8, and number 9 on the south course. And we also had silt removal work done in the channel that runs along the north side of Wax Myrtle Court. Earlier this year, we also completed some additional improvements at Mackey Creek Grill. We increased the seating with a ground level patio, and we also installed a retaining wall and new concrete walkways. Finally, we installed a second fire pit adjacent to the grill seating area. We ordered new furniture for the patio area and fire pit last March, but here again, we have experienced long delays in receiving the furniture. In the meantime, we repurposed pool furniture and borrowed some chairs from the bocce ball and horseshoe area as interim furnishings. The pump station for the golf course and grounds irrigation system was renovated early this year. The project included replacement of the pump motors and control panel in the pump station, and we replaced the pipe from the pump station to where it connects with the valves for the south and north courses. This renovation work was included in the reserve fund. And finally, as we explained in the town hall meeting last month, we have another major capital project planned for next year, in addition to the clubhouse renovation project. Beginning in February, work will begin on replacement of the irrigation system on the South Golf Course. The project will also include regrassing of the greens and improvements to the tees on the South Golf Course. The work is scheduled to begin February 1st. The course will remain open for play into early April while the contractor installs the main irrigation lines. Irrigation around the greens will be done starting in early April, during which one hole will be closed at a time, but play will continue. The course will be closed beginning May 16th, when work on the renovation of the greens and tees begins and irrigation work continues. Construction will continue through mid-August, and the south course will reopen when the new grass on the greens and tees has grown in sufficiently to resume play, which we estimate to be September 30, 2022. And that's all I have for you today. Now I will turn the meeting back to Jenny Johnson.
Thank you, John. That is our informational part of the meeting. However, I would be remiss if I did not address a topic being discussed amongst the community. The petition received regarding 2 bylaws and calling for the board to either repeal its approved renovation plan for the clubhouse in favor of a lesser project or submit the question to a referendum of the members. You may have read my initial comments on this posted on the website. If you haven't, then I direct you there. My only comments today are about the clubhouse renovation issue. I want to lay out the implications on the clubhouse project dictated by a receipt of the petition. For the clubhouse issue, our governing documents dictate that the petition contains signatures of at least 25% of the eligible votes in Moss Creek. The petitioners have 60 days from the board's decision on October 4th to submit the required signatures. The number of signatures submitted with the petition received October 14th is short of that number. If this petition has the required number of signatures by December 4th, then the process follows a prescribed track to a final decision on the clubhouse issue. If the petition does not achieve the 25% threshold, then the board action of October 4th stands. The practical implications of the results of this process are that the renovations will be delayed by several months, resulting in potential interest rate risk, potential rework on the plan, cost escalations due to inflation, loss of our place in line with our contractor, uncertainty by clubhouse employees, and a work schedule that pushes the club renovation much later into 2022, possibly even into 2023. But let me make this clear, that the petitioners are within their rights as members to submit this petition. I urge the community to have patience as we work through this process. At this time, I will announce the results from the election of the Board of Directors. The 3 directors elected for a 3-year term beginning January 1, 2022 through December 31st, 2024 are, in alphabetical order, Chris Gallert, Roland Bo Keene, and Dale Todd. Congratulations, and thank you to all who ran and to the nominating committee for their hard work. These new board members may participate at our board meetings beginning on this Thursday to help facilitate their transition to 2022. They will be allowed to participate in discussions, but of course, not be able to vote since their term officially starts in January. Finally, I will announce the results of the proposed covenant and bylaw amendments. First, the covenant amendments. Remember, 2/3 of the votes cast by ballot are required for the approval of a covenant amendment. And we'll go through the covenants one by one. Ready? Covenant Amendment 1. Amend the covenant regarding the percentage of eligible votes required to call a special meeting of the membership, along with the required days of notice to be in compliance with the South Carolina Nonprofit Corporation Act. The final vote was 986 or 82% in favor of the amendment, and 221 or 18% opposed. This covenant amendment passes. Covenant Amendment 2, amend the covenants to allow the board to set and modify fines as needed for member violations. The final vote was 896 or 74% in favor of the amendment and 311 or 26% opposed. This covenant amendment passed. Covenant Amendment 3, amend the covenants to allow the general manager or his designee to allow a overnight exception for a recreational vehicle prior to and or upon return from a multi-day trip. The final vote was 1,021 or 85% in favor of the amendment and 186 or 15% opposed. This covenant amendment passed. Covenant Amendment 4, amend the covenants to clarify that electric assist bicycles and bicycles with helper motors, as defined under South Carolina Code Section 56-1-10, parens 29, are not prohibited as motor-driven cycles. The final vote was 854 or 71% in favor of the amendment and 353 or 29% opposed. This covenant amendment passed. And now for the one bylaws amendment. A majority of the cast ballots are required for approval of a bylaw amendment, not 2/3, but a majority. The bylaw amendment is to amend the bylaws to provide clarification announcing the election or balloting results at the special member meeting in October, and to adjust the percentage of eligible votes needed to call a special meeting of the members to be in compliance with the South Carolina Nonprofit Corporations Act. The final vote was 1,014 or 84% in favor of the amendment and 193 or 16 opposed. The bylaws amendment passed. We have now concluded the scheduled agenda items, and we will open the floor for questions related to the material covered today. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, or maybe top of your screen, depending on the piece of equipment you're using, when submitting your questions. And please, as is our custom, include your full name and address on your question. All right, Susanna, will you help me with the questions?
And so I'm going to start with some questions that were submitted ahead of the meeting.
Yes.
The first question is from Tony Vuvalides. Can you give us an estimate as to how much it is costing the community in legal fees in responding to the petition, and what might be the construction cost increase because of the possible delays?
Okay. John, would you have any numbers for us, or do we even know yet?
You know, as far as the legal costs, I don't know at this point. We continue to incur some costs because we continue to need to seek advice and information from our attorney. So I really am not in a position right now to give you an estimate of what that might end up being. And really, it's the same thing for the cost of the delay of the project. I think that was the second question, wasn't it, Susanna?
Yes, sir.
It depends, you know, on a lot of factors: how long the delay lasts, how the market may change between now and when we finally do get underway, or at least until we get to the point where we can arrive at a guaranteed maximum price for the construction, and really several other factors. So it's hard, I think, to estimate what the impact will be, but I think almost certainly there will be some increase in the cost.
Thank you, John. Susanna.
The next question I have, Kate Shea submitted 2 questions, but we'll get to her second one if we have time, but she asked that this one be addressed first. Please address the rumors being circulated by an anonymous group. And she had sent to me a list of concerns. I'm not sure how to address those without reading those concerns out to you. She obviously received an anonymous letter, and she's asking for us to address the statements in the anonymous letter.
So the question, what is the question in this?
Well, I can read there's 4 statements in this anonymous letter. I guess I can read those, and you guys can address those. How about that? The first one is, there's other verbiage to this, but the first one is no one knows the actual cost of the project. It has been suggested that once bid out, the $5 million option could cost as much as $7.5 million.
So the question is, what is the cost of the project?
And
Okay.
the question is, no one knows the actual cost of the project.
Okay, Lanier, you want to take that? Do you
Sure.
know the cost?
Do I know the cost? What we have is from Choate and their subcontractors, all of the estimates for this project that was targeted to start, it was scheduled to start early in January. And when you added up all those estimates, it came to $5 million, including a contingency, which included a contingency, let me be clear. So when we get to go forward with a firm contract with Choate, it will be a fixed cap contract at $5 million. There is no $7.4 million plan. It's a fixed contract at $5 million.
Okay, thank you. Next question, please.
Is this a general contractor contract versus a construction management contract?
Sandra, wait a minute, I'm going to stop you there because what she's got in there are multiple questions. So in fairness.
Okay, so that was one. Okay, sorry. All right, now I'm going to go to a question came in from Carolyn McClure. I want to ask about the status of the clubhouse renovation.
What's the question? What is the status of the clubhouse
What is the
renovation?
status of the clubhouse renovation?
Okay, I think we covered that in the meeting, but Linnea, is there something you want to add to that, or John?
I don't think there's anything we can add other than we are on hold right now because of the petition.
Okay.
This is a question from Bill Killam. Why are you putting the clubhouse project on hold when the board was entirely within their powers in their vote?
John.
Well, we're in a situation where we don't know sitting here today what the scope of the project will be. If the petition is successful, the board could decide to scale back to the smaller of the 3 options that were originally presented to the board. Our decision on stopping most of the activities in the planning process was based on trying not to incur costs that might end up being, for lack of a better word, wasted if we don't go forward with the project that we're working to design. So in other words, it's trying to be, I guess, as cautious with member money as we can be, and as prudent with the money that we do spend. There are a few things that we can continue to work on, but anything that could end up being money spent that again is wasted, we've decided not to move forward with at this point.
The next question is from John Walsh. Will the new table area at Mackey Creek Grill be paved or concreted instead of the stones currently there?
John.
Yeah, we don't have any plans right now to change that surface. We use that as a semi-pervious surface so that some of the rainwater that would fall on it would siphon through the structure rather than just run off toward the waterfront. If we discover that it isn't working sufficiently as a seating, as a table and chair surface, we can always look at other options. But right now, we're not anticipating doing that.
This is from Tim Kessler. Why was the petition accepted by the administration or board on behalf of the members when the petitioners did not follow the guidelines for a petition as laid out in the bylaws covenants of Moss Creek?
John, do you want to talk about that, or Linnea from audit?
I would say the difficult part of that is if you look at the policy the way it's written now, we do have guidelines, but there are no ramifications if those guidelines aren't followed. So the intent of the petition had to be held as being valid, as opposed to the very specific nature about how some of those signatures were or might have been gathered. And I think that just shows a gap in our policy, which unfortunately we need to address moving forward.
Here is a question from Sandy Hoffman. Why was the decision initially made to start the clubhouse project in January instead of waiting until Mackey's Grill is open, leaving the members with no options for food and beverage? And what are the estimated losses in revenues from this decision?
John.
Well, our plan when we were looking at a January construction start on the clubhouse was to reopen Mackey Grill as the clubhouse closed for construction. And we were working through some different concepts for how we would utilize Mackey Grill during the first couple of months when it's really not comfortable, probably weather-wise, to be gathering outside at the grill, including some ideas on maybe providing takeout meals during that period of time, or in some other way to continue to provide food and beverage service to the membership. So it wasn't a situation where we were going to be closed for the first 2 or 3 months of the year in Mackey and give up that service and that revenue from the membership.
Okay, John, isn't January typically when we close the club anyway for a week or two to do some cleaning and we wanted to get the members through the holiday experience because so many people do use that club during the upcoming holidays.
Yeah, we do typically close for about a week to 2 weeks, depending on where where January 1 falls in the week time. And we'll likely do that again this year now that we're going to be open in the clubhouse for some period of time into 2022. So we'll be closed for a week or so and then reopening.
Okay, thank you. And Susanna, how are our questions coming in? Are they coming in?
Just got a couple more questions. This is from Kelly and Linda Yost. My wife and I are new. Can you please explain members' equity?
Good question. I had to look it up myself. No, seriously, when you look at I'm going to give you a little lengthy explanation. A lot of times people look just at the P&L and looked at your cash position, but it's very important to also look at that balance sheet. When you look at members' equity, you look at what are the associations. So it's not members, meaning my house or your house or any of your neighbors' homes. It's talking about the association's assets. So back to the balance sheet, our association's assets are about $26.6 million. And the association's liabilities, which in this case is 3.3 million, which is quite low. So our member equity is $23.2 million. It's a good number to look at and to compare to other communities like us who may have similar sized assets, but much higher liabilities, et cetera. So it's a KPI that the finance community looks at, tracking it on your balance sheet.
And KPI being key performance.
Key performance indicator. Sorry, I've started to become a treasurer already using my acronyms.
Where so we compare ourselves against other communities of like kind and size. Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you, Linnea. Next question, please.
This question is from Tim Berry, and I think it's related to the questions from Kate Shea. Why are we spending time addressing issues listed by anonymous?
Actually, I took the first one because I didn't realize it was, it had that connection to anonymous. We're going to stop taking those questions. Anything that's anonymous, we do not answer as a board. That's my fault. My bad. Next question.
Okay, this is from Charlie and Ann Tooley. Assuming the petition is valid and the signatures meet the required threshold, how soon can we vote to move forward with the agreed upon clubhouse project and put this all to rest once and for all?
John, you want to tackle that one? Frankly, we're still working through that process. There is a prescribed process. I can tell you that part. And the next thing is the board will have to look at it. We're still getting some legal counsel. There's a lot of pieces involved. This is not an easy issue. John, what would you like to add to that?
Well, I was just going to say that the petitioners have until early December to submit additional signatures, and if it were to take that long, it's going to be. We figured it'll delay things at least by about 4 months.
Okay, thank you. And that's if they get enough signatures, is that correct? Or if they do not?
Well, either way. I mean,
Either way. Okay.
Well, no, I take that back. If they don't, then we can start moving ahead right away. But if they do, and the board's going to have to make a decision on, do we proceed with the $2.6 million project, or we go ahead with the full project and a referendum? And there's several factors that will affect the timeline.
Right. And please, I'd like the community to know we'll keep you informed as we plot out this course. There are some very prescribed ways we have to deal with this. So bear with us. Please have patience. Susanna, what's another one, please?
This is from Dale Todd. He's asking for verification. Was the decision to delay the clubhouse based on the board's reluctance to proceed or based on legal advice?
I would say both. I think we're being very careful. We are taking this petition seriously. As I mentioned earlier, the members who sent the petition have the perfect right to do so. So, as a community, please have patience. Let us work through this. It's very important to do this the right way, not to rush it, to do this the right way. And it's actually also very complex when you talk about noticing meetings and sending out information and all that kind of stuff. This is not a simple process, folks. It's just not. Okay, thank you. Next question.
Before I ask the next, I've got 2 more questions, but if George Jones is on the call, I do have your name and your address, but there was no question submitted. So if you have a question, please submit the question. So I have an additional question from Carolyn McClurg. Have the contractors been asked when they would be available if we were able to proceed in January?
John.
Well, our original schedule was to start construction in January, and they were planning on being, they indicated their availability at that time. But sitting here today, I can't say that they haven't booked something else already, because we notified them shortly after we received the petition, and the decision was made not to push ahead with the entire planning process. We notified them and all the others that we've been working with on the project of the petition and the need to put it on hold. So I guess that's a long way of saying I doubt they'd be available. Well, I don't know if they'd be available if I told them today that construction is going to go in January, but we're not in a position to be able to do that. So the reality is it'll be sometime later than that.
Okay, again, as I said, this is a complex process and we're gonna do it right, the right way. Okay, thanks, John.
Okay,
Suzanne?
I got Mr. Jones's question. Will there be an audit process to validate signatures submitted on the petition?
Linnea, John, which one of you wants to take this one?
I'll do it. Oh, I'll do it. So yes, there is an audit process. The audit committee meets and it goes through on the petition to ensure that anyone who signed is a member in good standing. We also track the fact that some signatures have 2 votes and others have 1 vote, depending upon how your account is set up. So all of that goes into the validation process. It's very thorough. It was led by Dick Obrig and the audit committee whose names I had up earlier. So yes, there is a validation process for the signatures.
Okay, thank you, Linnea. Any other questions? Susanna?
Yes, I have a question from Lawrence Resnick. Can we see
Yes.
the name? Can we see the names on the petition?
It has not been our practice to show petitioners' names, and we're going to stick with that practice. Another question, Susanna.
Siltrice, I'm not familiar with the contents of the petition and the petitioner's objections to the clubhouse project. Is it funding?
Oh, I don't know how to answer that one.
Jenny, I would just say you've shown the petition. It's been listed and linked to one of your communications. So I think, Seal, I would just say it's better for you to go back and read that petition, which has been put out by Jenny. And Susanna, there must be a link for that on the website, correct?
There's a link to Jenny's message and that petition is posted. Yes.
And just
ma'am.
Seal, it's much better for you to read it, and otherwise you're asking us to interpret what their issue is. And I think it's just fair to say you should go read that petition. And it is out there for everyone to read.
Thank you, Linnea. That was a good explanation. All right.
She apologized. She says she's been out of the country. I think that's all my questions.
Okay. Well, I will then now entertain a motion to close the meeting. Could I have a motion to close the meeting, to adjourn? Okay, thank you. Second, thank you.
Second.
If anyone has an objection to adjournment, and this is always a very popular move, so rarely do we get objections, please so state in the Q&A section at the bottom or top of your screen. I will assume you're in favor of adjournment and the meeting will be adjourned if we don't have objections. So any objections? Going once, going twice. The 2021 MCOA special meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all for taking the time to join us. I will remind everyone that this will be posted. This meeting will be posted. It was recorded. It'll be posted on our website, maybe as early as tomorrow, if not the next day. So any of your friends and neighbors who were not with us today will have the opportunity to view it in its entirety on the website. So again, thank you all for coming, and I wish you a nice fall evening. Bye.